Hi there, my name is Aliaksandr Yakutovich and I'm a postdoc in EPFL-CU. In this presentation, I'm going to give you an introduction to AiiDA, which is a user-friendly interface to run simulations in the browser that is based on AiiDA. But before I start talking about AiiDA itself, let me take a step back and talk about the status of the simulation and of the simulation science these days. So this is Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2013, and the Nobel Prize has been given to the computational scientists. And as you can see in the press release, there was a statement: simulations are so realistic that they predict the outcome of traditional experiments. So if you think about this phrase, this is something that couldn't be said, let's say 30 years ago. And now the situation has changed so dramatically that the simulations has essentially become an additional experiment. And this is why we say that science today is based on three pillars. So the first and the oldest one is experiment. And since early days, humanity was trying to see patterns in the nature and try to reproduce them. Second pillar is theory. In order to understand those patterns that we see in the nature, we try to build theoretical models that explain them. And the third pillar is simulation, is the newest one, and these days is mostly done by computational scientists. And we think that the right place for simulation is actually to be in the middle, to be in between experiment and theory. And if you think about it, this is indeed the right place for simulations to be, because simulations are based on theoretical model developed by theoretical scientists, while the outcome of the simulations can be directly verified by experimental scientists. And this is where AiiDA comes into place. So the motivation for us is that science these days is evolving in collaboration between theory and experiment. However, the means of communication between those two parts are rather inefficient. So let me ask you a few questions. So as we already discussed, experimentalists are the ones who can verify the theoretical models against the measured data. Are they aware of the simulation tools that the computational scientists are developing? Second question I would like to ask is, how would you set up a communication channel between computational scientists and experimentalists? Would you do it in a traditional way, sending a PDF report via email and spending a lot of time preparing this report, or making a presentation and also spending quite a bit of time to present your data in a kind of understandable format? And how much time would you spend in preparing those files, converting data from between different data formats and different units and prepare them to look understandable? And the last thing is, would you like to be able to instruct your experimental collaborator to run simulations directly instead of you interfering in this process? AiiDA essentially is our response to those challenges. How do we do that? Well, as you can see, AiiDA has already gone a long way in order to make science reproducible and transferable. It can run complex workflows. It also stores selected data and the data provenance so that you can see where your data are coming from. But it has a Python or command line interface. Therefore, most frequent user of AiiDA is a computational scientist. While AiiDA adds this remaining bit of user-friendliness. Since it is fully integrated with AiiDA, it has all the nice features of AiiDA, but on top of that, it provides a user-friendly web interface through Jupyter notebooks and widgets. It allows for easy application development directly in Python, so you don't need to do any web programming to create your own application in AiiDA. It provides a collaborative environment so that you can interact with your experimental collaborators. It also provides handy visualization and editing tools. So if you want to make your own AiiDA application, most frequently you would just collect the tools that we provide with AiiDA into a small AiiDA application that will run your code or your workflows. And also it provides an app store for sharing your applications. So once you have created your own application, you can put it on the App Store and other people can use it. And this is the interface of AiiDA Lab. Here you see the home application of AiiDA Lab, which is visually different, and this application cannot be uninstalled. The application provides the core features of the service. It has a file manager to upload files to AiiDA Lab or upload it or download it to your computer. It has a standard Linux terminal. It has a task manager that allows you to see what are the applications that are currently running. It has the App Store that I mentioned before, where you can install a new application, and it also has a help button if you want to learn how to create your own application or you want to learn in general how to use AiiDA Lab. It also has a set of these rectangles that are the applications installed on this current AiiDA Lab. And as you can see, one of the application says that update is available. To perform the update, what we need to do, we go here and we click on Manage App button, and we will be redirected to the app manager of this particular application. The app management system of AiiDA Lab is tightly connected with Git. So the idea here is that we track the updates of your app repository, and if the update happen on the branch, for example, in that case, in the develop branch, will automatically notify the user of your application that there is an update. And the user can go here and click on the update button. That means that for sharing your application, you need to make your repository available, and also you need to register your application in the app repository of AiiDA Lab. And now I'm going to share with you a few examples of how we use AiiDA Lab in our daily scientific research. So the first example would be compare experimental and simulated gas adsorption isotherms that we do in our laboratory, in our LSMO laboratory in Sion. The prerequisite for this research project was a study that we did a year ago, where we developed a set of workflows to simulate adsorption isotherms. Indeed, going from a structure to the adsorption isotherm is not only one simulation, it's actually a set of simulations that depend on each other. So what we do, we start with the geometry optimization of a structure that is reported, let's say experimentally. We take the zip file, we clean it so that the chemistry is correct, and then we perform geometry optimization using CP2K package. For that, we had already the AiiDA CP2K plugin available, so we could just use it for the simulations. However, the work chains we had to develop for this project. Once the structure is optimized, what we need to do next is to compute point charges. Since we are going to use force fields for the next study, and those force fields do not contain the atomic charges, so we had to compute them using CP2K. And for that, to go from the charge density from the Hartree potential computed with CP2K to the point charges, we used the DDC code, which was available, but the plugin for AiiDA DDC wasn't available by that time, so we had to develop our own. In addition to DDC, we also developed a plugin for 0++ code, which computes the geometric properties, but also blocks certain pores. This can be necessary, for instance, if the pore is not accessible for the gas molecule. So the pore might be there, but it might be closed. So this was the job for AiiDA 0++. And last but not least, we had to develop an AiiDA Raspa plugin to run Monte Carlo simulations with Raspa code. And using this plugin, we created isotherm work chain, and that would first of all guess the isotherm shape, and then would distribute the pressure points along this gas shape, and afterwards would run those Monte Carlo simulation for every pressure point. This work has been published in ACS Central Science in 2019, and after this work has been done, we quickly realized that we as computational scientists are not the only people who might be interested in those workflows. Our experimental colleagues who measure the isotherms in the lab are extremely interested in having the possibility to compare their measured isotherm with the computed ones. So on the next slide, I'm going to show a video which will guide us through the isotherm submission process and also analyzing the results of the computed isotherms. So let's play it. So I click on compute one isotherm, and from there I'm going to be directed to the place where I can select a structure either from the database or from my laptop. I'll take structure from the laptop. I will choose the guest molecule, which will be methane. I'll put 300 as a temperature. I can also define some force field settings, but I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to define the pressure range. So it's going to be from 0 bar until 60 bar. I'm going to select the code on which simulation will be run, and I'll hit submit button. Once the simulation is done, I can click on analyze the results, and I'll be able to select the guest molecule, and I'll look in the database, and here I find two structures. So I take one, and there I will be redirected to the page which will show more explicit results of the simulation. So you will see the structure itself and also the isotherm and the enthalpy plots that were computed. All right, so this is how the AiiDA LSMO application looks like. And on the next slide, I'm going to discuss the study that we're going to perform with employing this application. So the question that I was asked the most is, can we trust the simulated results? The honest answer was that I don't know. And the thing is that to the best of our knowledge, we were not aware of a systematic study to compare the experimental data with the simulated results and kind of the study which assess the quality of those simulated results. So we decided to do our own, and the plan for the study that is currently ongoing is the following. So we screen the papers that are available in the literature, and then we take only the ones that have a reliable crystal structure and isotherm related or computed for this particular material. Then we extract those two, so we extract the experimental structure and we extract the isotherm. And this is exactly the place where the experience of our experimental collaborators comes into a place, because they are very well familiar with the tools used to identify the crystal structure, so they can judge whether the structure is reliable or not. Once we conclude that the structure is reliable, we go ahead with computing the geometric properties of the structure. This is needed, for instance, to understand whether the experimental sample was properly activated. By activation, I mean the removal of the solid molecules from the sample. And we do this by comparing the pore accessible volume of our theoretical model and the pore accessible volume computed experimentally. If those two match, we go ahead with computing the theoretical isotherms. And basically on the comparison of computed and experimental isotherms, we draw the conclusion how our computational model is reliable to predict the isotherms. On this slide, I'm showing the Excel file where we collect all the papers to be analyzed. So we collect the DOI links, and then we extract all the structures that are presented in the paper, and so we record them here, and for every structure we put a unique identifier, so we can further find them in AiiDA database. So first of all we look at the paper, we see how reliable the results are, and then once we conclude they're reliable, we select the screen. That means that the paper is ready so the structure is ready to be computed. So once the computation is done, we can use again our AiiDA interface to compare experimental data with the simulated ones. So we can do it directly in AiiDA, and once we open the results of a simulation, we can expand this compare to experiment window, and we can put here the experimental isotherms. As you can see on the screen, both of them will appear on the plot, and we can understand how close the simulated data are to the measured ones. So In order to simplify the work for comparison, we perform the automated units conversion, and we also perform an automated conversion between absolute and excess loading, because in experiment they mostly report the excess loading, while in simulation we obtain the absolute loading. Another example of usage of AiiDA lab comes from Swiss Institute for Material Science and Technology, that is called EMPA. The laboratory I'm going to talk about is interested in electronic properties of graphene nanoribbons. So as you can imagine, the task of computing the electronic band structure is a routine operation that they perform on a daily basis. However, before AiiDA lab was introduced to them, the typical problems that they had was the following. So imagine an experimental colleague asks you about nanoribbons ABC that you discussed maybe 1 year ago. And the question is, did you compute the band structure of those? Well, even if you would have computed those electronic structure, you may even not remember where they are. And the easiest thing would be to just recompute those. And the obvious second question would be, how much time would it take to compute the band structure of these nanoribbons? And when AiiDA lab was introduced, the situation has changed. This is the email from the head of the laboratory, Roman Fazel, who actually writes directly to a experimental PhD student. As you can see, he knows about the band structures that were already computed, and he is actually implicitly expects that the simulation will be done quickly. And as a reply to this email, you see that experimental PhD student says that he will be able to run AiiDA DFT on the ribbon to check the band structure, and he also thinks that it will be done soon. From our side, from the side of computational scientists, support is not needed. And if you think about it, this is a great thing, because we can spend more time on actually developing the methods, but not, wasting it on daily routine operations, because those routine operations, they can be automated and can be delivered to the people who are really interested in the results of those. Also, it's very beneficial for the scientific community, because the tools, the workflows that we develop, they're going to be reused by many people. Obviously, they're going to be tested and improved, so there won't be like many people running different workflows. There can be only one workflow that is developed by the community and reused to compute the electronic properties of graphene nanoribbons. On the next slide, I'm going to show a quick video again, and this video will give us an overview how this nanoribbon application works. So we're going to see how one can browse the results of nanoribbon computations and how one can see them. So let's click on search database, and here we will just click on search. We will not modify any filter. Let's take the first nanoribbon and click on show button. So we will see the band structure on the left side here, and also we will see the electronic properties. We can also project the orbitals on 2D space or see it in 3D, as you can see on, here. We can change the band, and the 3D representation will be adapted accordingly. Also, we can see the spin density, so all things are interactive and very easy to use. If we're interested in projected density of states, we can simply, again, look at the results of the simulation. We can take the structure, we can pick atom on which we want to project the density of states, and hit on plot button. And then the projected density of states will be displayed here on the screen. All right, so as you can see, the usage of those tools does not require a lot of experience in simulations. You don't need to know how to submit simulation to the supercomputer, how to retrieve the data, how to parse them, and how to visualize them properly. It's already done for you. So the only thing you should do, you should upload the structure, hit submit button, and then once the simulation are done, you can browse your results. And this brings me to the last part of my presentation. How can you create your own AiiDA application? AiiDA applications are fully modular. So if you want to build your own application, you would have to reuse the AiiPy widget that we use for the others. We also provide AiiDA widget-based package that adds a little bit more widgets that are useful, that are handy for material science. On the next slide, you will see such a widget called Structure Manager widget. So the idea behind this widget is that it allows to select multiple structure importers. It can be from your own computer, import from a database, from AiiDA database, import from Smiles, or take it from examples. And it also provides a list of editors. So here you can put as many editors as you want, and they will be used to edit the structure. If you use this code, you'll be able to insert such a structure editor into your application. However, this is not the only widget that we provide. We have many more. So we have visualizers for basic AiiDA data types. We have code, computer setup, and selection widgets. We have for chain progress visualization bar and more. So if you want to have a look at those, go to this page, AiiDA widget base, and you'll find the full list of the widgets. So with this, I am already at the conclusion of my presentation. So I hope I could convince you that AiiDA Lab is a nice platform for collaboration because it provides an environment where people with different expertise can collaborate on a common computational project. And I have shown you two examples, one from our laboratory where we compute isotherms, and another example from EMPA where they're interested in electronic properties of graphene nanoribbons. Second point is that usage of AiiDA Lab allows you to save time and allows you to avoid mistakes. Since the tools are reused, it's quite unlikely that there will be a mistake because they are checked by many people. Also, using AiiDA Lab, one can directly exchange the simulation results in appropriate format, boosting know-how transfer. So you don't need to spend time on converting data from one format to another and make it understandable for others. AiiDA Lab already does it for you. And thanks to the modular setup, AiiDA Lab allows to easily build powerful tools by combining compact, well-defined components, which are called widgets. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Let me just thank the AiiDA and Materials Cloud team who contribute their time and their passion to those projects. And I would like to thank you all for your kind attention.